Hello, my dear friends. As I mentioned in last week's Parsha Podcast, this week, because on Shabbos, the Shabbos coincides with the first day of Pesach, and therefore on Shabbos we don't read a new Parsha. And in fact, next week as well, it's the second days of Pesach that's going to coincide with Shabbos, and therefore next week we're not either going to have a new Parsha, but I still have something for you to listen to today. I know, at least this is true with me, if there's a week with no Parsha Podcast, I get a little antsy and I get a little bit grumpy. So I don't want anyone else to have that experience. So this is what we have in store for this episode. My dear friend Dan Kullman, whom you know, I'm sure, and he hosts the Shema Podcast. So he just recently recorded an interview with my two eldest sons, my son Akiva, who's 14, you may recall about a year ago was his bar mitzvah. And then my second son, Yehoshua, who, please God, his bar mitzvah is going to be in the summer. More about that soon. So Dan interviewed Akiva and Yehoshua Wolbe, my sons, for his podcast, for the Shema Podcast. And he was gracious enough to allow me to cross-post it on the Parsha Podcast. And as you know, a couple of weeks ago, I had a little interview with my daughter Miriam. So my two sons, Akiva and Yehoshua, they were saying, well, what about us? How come we don't get some love on the Parsha Podcast? So here you go. This is like a Pesach special. He interviewed them about, the Pesach Seder and the Pesach atmosphere and some of the events of the Exodus. I listened to it. I really enjoyed it. I, of course, am biased, but they went to Dan's studio and he interviewed them and I listened to it and it was great. If you enjoy this, of course, make sure you subscribe to Dan's Shema Podcast. But here you go, a Pesach special, Dan Kullman interviewing my two boys, or two of my boys, Akiva and Yehoshua Wolbe. I hope you enjoy this. Maybe next week as well, we'll do some other Pesach special of sorts. I don't know. But again, this week there's no Parsha. We read the Torah portions that relate to Pesach. Next week is the same thing. But here's a Pesach special with Akiva and Yehoshua Wolbe being interviewed by Dan Kullman. And as always, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I hope you have an incredible week and a fantastic and splendid and kosher Pesach.
Welcome, Akiva and Yehoshua Wolbe. The audience, I know, is excited to have you back. I think it's been a year now since I had you on last.
Yeah, something like that.
And I think that out of all my episodes, that I got the most positive feedback from you guys. You think it'd be like Nassim Black or your dad, the Rabbi Yochanan Wolbe, the podcast star, but no, it was you two. And that's why I knew I had to have you back on the show. So probably a lot's changed over the last year. And before I have you bring us up to speed on the last year since you were on the podcast last, for those of you who are new to listening to the Shema Podcast, last year when I had these young tzaddikim on, I introduced them as my spiritual big brothers. And the reason I said that they were my spiritual big brothers is because their father, Rabbi Yochanan Wolbe, is my spiritual father. Many of us have a father that brings us into Olam Hazeh, and then someone that comes into our life and brings us into Olam Haba. And since Rabbi Yochanan Wolbe is that person, he may say, don't speak so fast, Dan. We haven't gotten you there yet, but at least he's the one that's having the biggest influence and always has at getting me there. But if that is the case, if he is my spiritual father, then Akiva and Yehoshua are my spiritual brothers. And considering they have grown up, lived from day one in such a holy environment full of emunah and Torah wisdom, they are definitely my spiritual big brothers. So welcome back, gentlemen. I would love for you to each take a moment and just bring the audience up to speed. What's gone on the last year since we spoke last?
Nothing's really changed except I've grown a lot taller. I have a new brother. It's my last year in the school that I'm in. But overall, everything's pretty much the same.
Yeah, not much has changed. I've gotten bigger, and the new brother.
And your new brother's name is?
Yisrael Meir.
Beautiful. I think you are now taller than me, Akiva. Is that true? Let's stand up real quick. I want to check it out.
Considering I'm your big brother, then.
Yeah, it's true. You're spiritually have always been taller, but now we are physically the same size. But I doubt by the time I bring you back next year, you will be towering over me looking at the stature of your father. So let's get into this. Such a great, important time of year. And growing up like I did, and a lot of Jews did, in a very secular environment, there's a lot that gets left out of the importance of it. You know, the purpose of Pesach or Passover becomes about, it's a time to get family together, which is a fantastic, of course, aspect of it. But the deeper meaning and why we're doing that, we need to pull that out and share that with them. So if you could just share with me and talk about like this time of year, as you approach Pesach, if there is a change in the atmosphere of the Wolbe home.
Yeah, well, on Pesach, you're not able to eat chametz, or like bread. So what you do is you need to clean the whole house for Pesach, and you can't use dishes that were used with chametz unless you tevel them, you make them pure. But it gets like more stressful. We move all the chametz into like one box. We have a box that's our chametz box, and something's always happening. People are cleaning, pulling apart the dining room to like clean all the nooks and crannies.
Right. Now, are you guys responsible for your own room and going through your clothes and backpacks?
Clothes, not really, but backpacks, yes. And like last night we did like the table and chairs. You have to like pull apart the table because it's like has multiple pieces. You have to like go through everything like with a fine tooth comb, go through every single piece of everything.
So everyone's involved in the Wolbe home in this project.
A lot more participation and much more work. Well, most stuff we just lock up in a closet, like tape over it and like make a sign, no, can't open this on over Passover. And you sell that to a non-Jew.
Okay.
So over Passover, the non-Jew owns whatever's in that closet. So for all we know, there's a loaf of bread there. And the non-Jew owns that, so it's not ours.
Right. Okay.
And then afterwards, after Pesach, we buy it back from it.
So I'd like to hear from both of you on just sort of a general big picture. Why is Pesach such an important time a year for a Jew? For those who have maybe not really understood the depth of Pesach, what would you say to someone if you were trying to talk to them and say like why this is such a big deal, what they should be focused on, why the Almighty wants us to do this once a year?
Because this is our beginning. This is where we came from. This is our redemption, our exodus. It's like our founding event where Moses and Aaron, they took us out from the greatest nation of that time, the super, super powerhouse.
And we were nothing. We were the slaves. And they were like Persia at its prime. And nothing could stop them. And then the small Bnei Yisrael, they overtook them with miracles that no one has seen before.
So why do you think the Almighty wanted to put us in servitude under Pharaoh and then do all these incredible miracles and then pull us out again?
Probably to like show how great he was, make like a grand entrance to the coming of Har Sinai when we got the Torah, and is like trying to show everyone, don't mess. Like, you mess with us, you mess with God. He'll do this to you.
You're saying it basically shows, he wanted to show the Jews and the Egyptians.
And everyone else what he could do.
Yeah.
Don't mess.
He is the ultimate power. And I assume it was before going to Mount Sinai that the Jewish people, after being beaten down by being slaves for so long, they needed to know that as well.
They were like on the 49th level of lowness. And then God brought them up to the 50th level and he spoke to them. And he brought them back down to, over Pesach, he brought them back down to level 0, like even. And then during the Sfirat Omer, they count up it's 50 days until Shabbos. And Shabbos, back when Shabbos, when he gave us the Torah, those 50 days are bringing up to it are one level higher, one level higher, one level higher.
when Yitzias from Mitzrayim, when he took us out of Mitzrayim, we were at the lowest of the low, like one level lower, we would have been done. And then Hashem jolted us from all the way down to the highest level of purity. And then after that, we went down to even. And then every day we just climbed up one step, until we finally made it to the ultimate Kedusha, ultimate holiness at Har Sinai.
Okay, so first, basically, the Almighty pushed us up to that level and then dropped us back down and said, now get there yourself. This reminds me of, there's a saying in the military, I think maybe it's the Marines, about how they tear men apart. They break them down, right? And then they build them back up again, stronger. And it seems like maybe that's what the Almighty was doing. Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, it's our rebirth. That was the beginning of the legacy. The main thing you start from was Moshe took us out of Egypt from the greatest army that was ever there, and then we were nothing, and he just brought us out.
So the Almighty maybe is wanting to show us, because we've had to be reminded of this throughout history, that no matter what powers exist in the world, we are under his supervision, and we should have nothing to fear when we're under his supervision. That's comforting right now, to know that we do what we're required to do. We live within the confines of Halak, and we follow the Torah, and the Almighty says, I will protect you. You have nothing to worry about. Is that sort of an idea there too we can take right now when the world gets a little scary and you see these despots and these maniacs and like Russia and everything? Okay. Now, why is it called a Seder, which is the English translation I've learned is order? What is the purpose of to go and experience Pesach or Passover by having a Pesach Seder or order?
You can look at it it has many different facets. You can look at it from so many different ways, but I'm just going to say one way where you can just look at it and look at it as life. Life has its own crazy, seemingly crazy order, but it's really God orchestrating it the right way. And when Chazal instituted this order of A, B, C, D,
right,
that was that's the perfect way. You can't add to it, can't take from it. It's perfect, just like how God orchestrates our world.
Yeah, but another easier way is there's no order. It's Kadesh, Orchatz, Karpas, etc. Right? You might say, we have to wait so long, we've read so many words, and then we have to eat. Why can't we just eat before everything? We're starving, right?
Right.
Because there's a specific order, and this order has to be followed.
You sort of touched on this already. Maybe you want to elaborate a little more. One of the things I mentioned in the introduction is the majority of Jews out there celebrate Passover. I mean, I think I shared last year when we discussed Pesach how when I first started becoming religious, I was out of town at a conference, started talking to someone, and he asked me, are you Jewish? And I said, yes. And he said, so am I. But then he immediately said, but I'm an atheist. And I said, okay, fine. So we started talking more, and I just started talking about business in the back of my mind, thinking I wanted to come back to this. And after I got his mind away from it for a little bit, I just sort of came back and casually asked, so what are you doing for Passover? And he said, oh, Passover, that is the biggest time for my family. I fly all my family in to my home in New York, and we have this big Passover Seder. And it's so important, even though he had to declare immediately, I'm an atheist, but there's something that just compels a Jew no matter what about Passover. And I was sort of saying but most Jews don't know about Shavuos. And if you really look at it, this is a whole journey we're going through, right? It starts with Pesach, but then it goes through to Shavuos, right? These things are all connected to one another. And you sort of already discussed that, Akiva. I'd like to see if you had anything else to elaborate on why Pesach is the necessary initial step to get us all the way to Shavuos and the acceptance of the Torah.
It's just a good way to start us off, having this abundance of miracles, and you see God's on your side, and you can't be stopped, and then you just keep on going higher and higher and higher. It's a good way to get a good kickoff, and then keep on going all the way to Shavuos.
Okay.
Yeah, like you said before, it's counting the steps towards Shavuos. But also you could go back and Shavuos is technically when we got the Torah. So it's an order. It's literally going back in the day. Pesach happened in Nisan, And he goes, and then on that day, it's like the days in Shavuos, it's like the happenings back then. What happened then? It's just happening now, and we're just celebrating in different ways.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's go through when we're sitting at the Passover table and we're looking at the Seder plate. Let's go through each item on here. What does it mean? Why is it part of this time of year? And let's start with talking about matzah. So
matzah, it shows us after the 10th makkah, when all the firstborn starting to die, Paro's like, okay guys, he told Moshe, he's like, get out of here. I can't stand you guys anymore. First, you made everything the blood, and then the frogs. You're killing us. Come on. So it's like, don't even wait for your bread to rise. You have to leave. So it shows us the speed of the Exodus, how we had to bake it really fast, so it had to be like really flat because it didn't rise yet. It also shows us that matzah, it says halach ma'anya, it's poor man's bread. So when it says poor man's bread, we're like, why are we still eating this poor man's bread? Yeah. So we can say, before we left Mitzrayim, who were we servants to? We were slaves to Paro. So we ate this poor man's bread, right? Okay. So then why are we still eating it? We're like kings, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when we left Mitzrayim, we transitioned. Once we were servants to Paro, and now we're servants to Hashem. We're still like servants to Hashem, so that's why we still eat the poor man's bread.
All right, let's talk about the Mara and the Chazeres.
The Mara comes like this, like our pain and our sorrow, and Mara's, it's bitter, and it shows us our pain and our tears and our in slavery back in Egypt.
So by eating that, it sort of is that
reminiscing the old days when we used to get whipped by these people, and so we eat this bitter herb, sort of like to show this is what it was. We were like bitter. It was terrible in Mitzrayim.
So this is like a different type of learning that Hashem wants us to go through. Like normally we just sort of like, you study Torah and you're like intellectualizing everything. Here it's, he's wanting us to intellectualize it, but also to make it experiential through all these things. Okay, get us in that state of mind. All right, let's. Who wants to tackle the next thing on the Seder plate?
I'll do it.
Okay, go for it.
So charoses, it's like made out of like apples and some other things. Mm-hmm. But so it's sort of like to counteract the bitterness a little of the Mar, to show us that even with the bitterness, we were slaves. Hashem was still with us the whole time.
When Paro made a decree that no more kids, they would go out. The husbands didn't want to bring kids into this world, right?
Right.
So the wives would go out and have, when they were giving birth, they would go out and they would go give birth under the apple trees in like the vineyards and stuff like that.
Because that's when they went, and that's like showing us how we, even through the hard times, we were still what we were supposed to do. We were still striving, do what Hashem said, pru or vu, be fruitful, have kids.
This reminds me, Rabbi Lazinga just told me last Sunday that there's a midrash that they would give birth under these trees. I didn't realize it's an apple tree. I didn't realize that's what ties in to the Harosis, but that then the women had such a munah that they would leave them, and then Hashem would basically raise these children. But the other idea you discussed is something that we can definitely all take in our lives, and that is we have what seems bitterness, right? We all have challenges and things that come up, but at the same time, what God's trying to tell us is there's sweetness there. Like we can't see what he's orchestrating, but just to know and have trust that we'll see eventually those hard times, there's sweetness to them because he was just sort of orchestrating something for a greater good. All right, what's next? Who wants to tackle it?
It's the zeroah, the roasted bone. It's the roasted bone. It's called a zeroah. And the zeroah, it's called. I think it says Zerani Tuya.
It says Hashem took us out with a strong hand. It was ran into it with an outstretched arm. So this like roasted bone sort of shows like the outstretched arm trying to bring us out.
Okay.
But also we can also I think we can tie it into the Karban Pesach, the Pesach offering.
Was there any significance to that particular animal that they brought as an offering?
I think like they tied it to their bedpost, and then they put the blood over their doorways, and God knew once he saw the angel of death, I'm assuming, once he saw the blood stains over the doorways, he didn't, during the Makas Barchoros, the killing of the eldest son, he didn't touch them.
In the Egyptians, from what I understand, they worship sheeps. So there's got to be some tie-in. I appreciate any insight you had here on why Hashem wanted us to take the animal that the Egyptians worshipped and then turn it into a nice barbecue and offering to him. Any thoughts?
It's like we're killing your God. Look, your God is like a sheep that we eat. We're able to eat your God.
Awesome. Who's got the next one?
So the Beitza is the roasted egg. So the roasted egg, that and the Zroa, the bone, they're both remembrance for the 2 karbanos that we lost. The 2 karbanos that we weren't able to have, right? The Chagiga and the Karban Pesach. The Zroa is the bone, and that's for the Karban Pesach. And then the Beitza, the egg, is for the lost Chagiga.
Now, there's something about the roundness of the egg. Have you learned anything about that we should be contemplating during Pesach?
Maybe that like everything's like a circle.
What goes around comes around.
Yeah. The people on bottom, Hashem can make on the top, and the people on top, he can make on the bottom.
And like that.
Right. Just like that. All right. So what's the last thing on the Seder plate that we need to understand, guys?
It's karpas. It's one of the, not only is it one of like the sections, Kadesh, Orchatz, karpas, it means we take a non-bitter vegetable. It literally means celery. And I think we dip it like in salt water, just like during the Seder we do it also. But
it's one of the orders. It's Kadesh. We do Kiddush, Orchatz, wash your hands.
And don't say bracha.
And then it's karpas. You dip the vegetable into the salt water.
And why is that?
Why do we dip in salt water?
Yeah.
I think it's to remember our tears that we cried in Egypt.
What's with making us remember such difficult times and get bummed out and sad, remembering how difficult things were?
No, we're not being sad. Look at this. We're literally, that night we're royalty.
So why are we constantly, why does Hashem want us to go through this process where we're eating things to remember how broken and bad in a bad state of affairs we were back then in Egypt?
Because Hashem wants to show us, look, you were crying, you got beaten, you got whipped, and then you should have been destroyed. And now look what you are. You're spread across the whole world. It's not able to happen again. Hitler tried it. Other people tried it. But they just can't do it.
Maybe instilling a sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
Towards Hashem, because we were so low. And now God brought us back up where we are now.
Because it's hard to be grateful for something unless you can visualize not having it. Like you guys have had, it's a great place to grow up, And so until you can sort of picture yourself once a year not having this amazing community, then when you imagine not having it and being in that place where...
So you recognize what good you have in your life.
Exactly. Let's tackle the 4 questions.
Okay, so the 4 questions, it starts off, why is this night different from all the other nights? So it's showing us why is this night different. It's because on other nights we eat chametz. Now we're eating matzah. Other nights we're not leaning. Now we are leaning, right? It's like showing us how is this night different from all nights. And then it says one of the other reasons is it's like to arouse the children's curiosity, to like get them a little more involved.
Okay.
And so that's something that comes up a lot of times in the Seder. It's like to make the children a little more involved, to get their curiosity.
Okay. So what's the next one?
The 4 sons. So there's 4 different sons. There's the Chacham, the smart one. He's wise. And then there's the Rasha, the evil one, the wicked one. He's like, I don't want to do this. Why are we part of this? And then it answers everyone because you need to do this and this. And then there's the Tam, the one who's like
He's simple.
He's simple, yeah.
He's like the simple one.
He's a simpleton.
And then there's he's like, what's going on now? And then there's the Eino Yodea Lishol, the small one. He doesn't know how to act. And we need to spell it out for this one. And so
we need every single one of these to have like a functional
Seder.
Yeah. Each one of these has their own reason for the Seder.
Would you say that there are some Jews who are one or the other, or that all of us in our life sort of pass sometimes between one of these types?
I'm sure everyone has like their stages where they're just simple, and then I think everyone for sure goes through their Eino Yodea Lishol, like that first stage.
And the simple one they also probably go through, and the next two decide where their life's going to lead.
So, and this also talks about how to connect with Jews at their different stages where they may be, correct?
Yeah. And the thing is, there's like 4 different types of learning.
Okay.
And so you need all of them. So you need all these things to help have a good Seder.
To have a meaningful conversation.
But then the Russia, yes. What's going on here? Why are we here? What are we doing?
I want to go back outside and watch video games, play video games.
And he also says here in the Haggadah that he says, why do you do this? It's not us. He's sort of in that state of mind, like distancing himself. Okay, so I was the Rasha, because when I was growing up, I was like, why are we doing this? We don't believe it's not true.
I'm sure you're thoroughly confused. You weren't the Rasha. You were.
No, but I was in that state because I didn't believe any of it was true. So when my family would say, let's sit around and have a Seder, I was like, why are we doing this? You know? And then I'm sure there's times too where there's parts of our Yiddishkeit where, you know, our rabbis tell us and our teachers to do certain things, and maybe we want to do those certain things. Maybe not right then and there, you know? Yeah. There's times where we rather just play and do something else. Where we sort of distance ourselves. That's something for the rest of...
For you guys.
For you guys, right?
I'm not part of this.
I'm not part of this. And so there's those moments too where you maybe notice that one of your friends are doing that, right? They're pushing back on something, and now you sort of know how to talk to them, which is what does it say? What is the way to approach someone who's not really wicked? There's no wicked Jews. You know, it's just for whatever
ignorant
reason.
He's the ignorant one.
Yeah, they're just sort of there. They don't understand the reason why. They're not connected to it. So the Haggadah gives some guidance on how to approach it, because we all want to, you know, every Jew is connected. We're all in this together, right? And we need to know how to approach other Jews when they find themselves in different states and places to keep us all connected and together.
It says in the Haggadah, it's because of this that Hashem did so for me when I went out of Egypt. For me, but not for him. If he was in the Egypt, he wouldn't have been out, because he's being ignorant. He's like, this isn't for me.
I'm pretty sure like the Rambam says that only 20% of the Jews left at the time, and also when the Mashiach comes, only 20% of Jews are going to be going. And 20% of Jews means pretty much all of us, everyone that we know, because no one that we know is Rasha. We all are Shema Torah mitzvahs. We all go by the Torah. But there are some people that are so far that are part of the 80% and won't end up coming. So we have to bring as many people as we can to the 80%, into the 20%.
Exactly. And I did ask your dad when I learned that if it's a prophecy for the future that's not favorable for the Jewish people, then it doesn't have to come true. It's just a warning. Which means if we're on our game, if we learn how to approach each type of Jew, then we can
do 100%.
flip it. We can do 100%. Exactly. That's what we should go for. No man left behind. So the simple son is not really necessarily stupid, from what I was reading in the book I read, In the Heart of Fire by Rob Moshe Weinberger on the Haggadah. Simple son is actually a very lofty type person. You know, just pure Munah. Maybe he's not sophisticated in his thinking, but he takes everything very simple, appreciation, follows what Hashem wants. But yet there's a different way of approaching them than the wise and super intellectual. Now, the son who is unable to ask, how would you describe someone who's unable to ask?
Maybe like a newborn or just...
Or like a 5-year-old, he doesn't know what's going on, right? Maybe he learned in class, but maybe like a 3-year-old, he's probably able to ask. He's like, can I have a cookie? He's probably able to ask. But I think it's like saying he's like not of very high intelligence.
He's not, maybe physically, but I know 20 years ago, before I knew anything, I wouldn't even know what questions to ask. I think maybe there's an idea here that...
So maybe people who are they could be 40, but they would still fall under the category of She'ena Yodea Lishol. He doesn't know how to ask.
Maybe just because he doesn't know what to ask.
Right. So maybe when we find those people in our life, we help them find the questions. I think this is sort of providing that roadmap to get us to 100% when Mashiach comes. Because there's really, like I said, I can't remember who said this. I want to say it was, someone told me it was the Chazon Ish.
Chazon Ish, yeah.
Yeah. He said there's no evil Jews in our generation. There's just those that are ignorant, that were brought up and
they just don't know.
Darkness. Right, exactly.
The Gemara says that you can't, it's a Yalaj Nishba. I think so. I think that's the term.
What's that mean?
It's like a little kid that was kidnapped.
Okay.
We can't, and let's say even if he eats pork, we can't hold him to that because from such an early age, he was brought up, that was his life.
Also, people who are in monasteries, Jews who got sent to monasteries.
Such as over World War II.
Right.
Or in the Spanish Inquisition. They're 5-6-year-olds. They can still remember Shabbos meals, but they're surrounded by everyone who's doing something else. So they just merge with them. Maybe they fought, but they couldn't stand it for that long.
Right. That is the line, actually. Thank you for reminding me. He said, there's no evil Jews, just captive children. That was the line. Which you can't hold someone they said that they became captive to be responsible for their action, which is why they're not judged for being in such a situation. Okay. So now that we are equipped to communicate not only with other Jews, but when you get older, not you guys, but I know me, I sort of go through each of those stages. There's parts of me that are probably all 4 stages.
For sure, me also.
And so it's how do we talk to ourselves when we're in that different state? And I think this is giving us, the Almighty's giving us a great recipe for this. All right. Why do we break the middle matzah and hide the larger half for the afikomen? Who's got this?
Okay, we break the matzah. And then we hide the larger half for the afikomen. So there's 2 answers. Either the one which came up before is to get the children involved. They need to find the afikomen because a lot of families they hide the afikomen and the children need to find that. If they find it, they get the afikomen. They only give it back to their parents when they get they'll get a present for getting the afikomen. It's sort of like a blackmail, so to speak.
So we're teaching the youth blackmail technique. Okay.
They just take it, you take it, you hide it, and you say, okay, fine, you know what? If you don't buy me this rollerblades, I'm not giving it back.
Oh, you're stepping up the ante. Okay.
Yeah,
Akiva's going
but you can't do you need it back because you can't end the meal.
Right.
You can't end the meal. And it's also for dessert. You need it for dessert. It's part of dessert. Maybe you have your ice cream and your cakes, but part of the dessert is matzah.
The last thing that you eat is the afikomen.
And afikomen, that's what it means. I read recently it means dessert. I didn't even know that. So why hide the larger half?
Why the larger half?
Yeah.
I think I was learning a couple days ago that it's the geula. It's the geula is the matzah. We want the geula.
Wait. Translate that term real quick too for the audience in case they don't know the term.
Geula is salvation. It's the Mashiach when it comes. It's geula, the salvation. Okay. So what do we want? We want the bigger salvation. So we want the bigger piece. So
right. Okay. It's like hiding. It's like if you have to choose where you want the bigger half, do you want it right now in this world where we're in exile?
Or do you want it in Olam Haba?
Right. Exactly. Okay. Very nice. So Akiva, you're gonna start off. Let's go through each of the plagues. What does it mean? First off, what happened? What did it look like? What did the Jews experience back then? Tell us what you know about the first plague for the Egyptians and a miracle for us, right? Depends on whose vantage point you're looking at.
The Egyptians, they served multiple gods, right? One of their gods was this Nile. It's a juggernaut of a river, and when they're serving this river, and they're mocking them. The Hashem's mocking the Egyptians by saying, "What? That's your god? Come on!" And he's just destroying one thing and the next. But like in the olden times, that's what their fields, their infrastructure, their everything.
All their commerce was done through this. That's how they become wealthy.
And how do they water their fields? How do they take a bath? How do they take a shower? How do they brush their teeth? How do they go to the bathroom? All they did that was all because of this Nile. And once it does that, it hit a hard spot. Like it did some good damage.
It collapsed. Their whole life ran on this Nile.
Right. It was this whole idea of that was their source of all their tremendous wealth. Are they the most wealthiest country in the world at the time?
Yeah, but also there's with the thing, the Makkah's each were like for 6 days, right?
Yeah.
So what would the Mitzrayim do for water? They needed water, right? So how do they live? They can't drink blood. So what they did is they would go to the Jews. Since the Jews, they drank, their water was water.
Wait. Where do they get their water from?
Even if they took it from the Nile, if they take a cup and they fill it up with blood from the Nile, it switches. So what they did to the kid, he's like, hey, I'll buy that water for 25 cents. It wouldn't work. But if he's like, hey, you see that massive the bottle of water that's this big? I'll give you $10,000 for it, right?
Right.
So he gave it to him. So he gave him, and then it'll turn to water. So another way that the Jews came out with like tons of riches, this was like a starting point to like make their bank account look a little.
They're the only ones. It's like you guys always see these. The Egyptians wanted water, they had to come to the Jews, and that was it.
Yeah, but the price were like exorbitant. The prices were like so blown up. It was like so expensive.
The Jews were gouging them.
Yeah.
The poor Egyptians. Okay.
Well, really poor in multiple ways.
Then plague number two is frogs. So after the blood, they're like, finally we got our water back. And then out of their beloved, now turned back to normal Nile River, came out this massive frog. Some people say it was like a crocodile, or there are crocodiles there, but we'll go with the frogs.
One huge frog.
Yeah. And so then Mr. Michael, what is this mutant giant frog doing here? So they took their sticks and they were smacking it. And then out of his mouth, he like just spewing frogs everywhere, so many frogs. And there's so many frogs. And then they're like going everywhere. They're going into houses. You couldn't sleep. The croaking was like deafening, the noise.
Why frogs though?
Like maybe also like it's not. Like
and
frogs,
there's also
you don't think
frogs.
You don't think frogs are gonna like annoy you, right? A frog. Okay, so kick it out of the way, right?
Now imagine 100,000 of them.
And that's in just your bedroom.
They're like all over you. They're like crawling into your pajamas.
You're not scared.
They were going into your bread. They would get baked. They would some of them would jump into the fire, and for Kiddush Hashem. And then there was like, and I don't remember, but something happens to those frogs.
Yeah, I know. When Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh's like, just get them out, go, get them out of here. Moses and Aaron's like, okay. They got rid of all the frogs, but then there's no frogs left, right? Then all the ones that went into the fire, they came coming right back out. So it's not like they didn't die. What happened there was like a mystery.
Wow, amazing. Okay, what's next?
Lice. Lice is like, it's kinim. It's, if you ever had like an itch, you just itch it, okay, tomorrow it's gone. But they literally went inside their bodies. So those are itches you cannot itch.
Oh, that'd be miserable.
It was.
And there were millions of them. And also...
They were the size of eggs, supposedly. Like eggs or olives, I don't remember.
Olives, I'm pretty sure. Because they're small, and there were millions of them. So, and it shows us how many lice were there. There were like so many, it was like a foot, and you couldn't like get down to the ground. You're like walking on lice.
Oh, okay.
And also, Yaakov, when he died, he didn't want to be buried in Mitzrayim. There are like 3 reasons, I think. One reason was that when Techias HaMesim at Mashiach, when all the dead people will come alive, then he didn't want to roll all the way to Eretz Yisrael. So he wanted to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Another reason is when Kinim, lice, he didn't want lice to be crawling over him. And then the third reason is because he didn't want the Mitzrayim to worship.
Okay, wonderful. Wild beasts. What type of wild beasts?
All sort of animals. Any animal you can think. Every single animal in the world, I'm pretty sure. Tons of animals.
I think there were also some that were not ever seen before.
When I went to Disney with my family, we stayed at Animal Kingdom Resort. You walked out on your balcony and there was giraffes and all these animals going around. That was pretty cool, but this doesn't sound as pleasant as that.
Imagine they're trying to kill you and they're like lions.
Going at 40 miles an hour and they're chasing you.
Right, okay. All right, in the pestilence, what is that?
I think it like killed all their crops.
And all their animals.
Not crops, yeah, animals. All the animals that were outdoors. Moses and Aaron warned the Egyptians, like, keep your animals indoors, otherwise they're going to die. Very simple. And all their cows, all their infrastructure, it just...
Was that the hail or was that the pestilence?
Hail also killed everything else outside.
No. Hail we'll talk about later.
Okay, so the pestilence kills everything in the fields, destroys, again, their food supply.
Not their food, their animals.
Their animals, okay. Which is, the animals are their food supply. That's their well. That's where they get their clothing from and their food, the meat, the milk. Okay.
Number 6 is boils. So all the Mitzrayim, they had these massive boils all over themselves, and all the doctors, they're just pouring all their medicines. Nothing would affect this.
Like, even if you knew how to cure one, I think there were 24 different types of boils. If you knew how to cure one, a different one, it made it worse.
So anything you try just hurt more, and so they have to beg Moshe, stop. And so he stops it after, and soon later it goes to number 7.
Okay.
Hail. When you see hail, it's like small, it's like marble sized. It hurts if you're outside, but whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes is done.
Yeah.
But these hail, this is, I don't know how big it was. I think it was like the size of a refrigerator.
Okay. It's big hail.
It's very, very big. It just has like a refrigerator. That's huge. And inside of it, it defies nature. There's fire burning inside this encasement of ice.
Ice capsules with fire inside. So it was
it hits the ground, it cracks, and all these trees, everything gets burnt.
Okay, so they're like being bombed.
Pretty much.
But now...
And then all the animals that the Mitzrayim brought inside, the small amount of animals that they brought inside, they weren't born this time. So all the animals outside and the ones that were inside in the pestilence, they all died.
So now they have no more
animals.
What's happening to the Jewish people?
Jewish people are living life easy.
Wherever they were staying...
Goshen.
Goshen was totally protected.
Yeah. Nothing happened. Let's say non-Jew ran into Goshen because he's like, they're not getting in hail.
I'll just go over and
he walks into Goshen, ice ball, hail flies on him, doesn't touch anyone else.
Wow, okay. All right, what's next?
Locusts, number 8.
So locusts, evening, and sometimes there's a swarm, it like eats everything. Never seen locusts like these. These locusts, it's like you couldn't see. So many locusts, they like...
Can't tell night between day.
And they were just like, it's like you took a vacuum and just like sweeped everything up. There was nothing. Any nutrition, anything.
The wooden posts on your gate. They got eaten through.
To this point, the Egyptians had...
Nothing.
Okay. Who's got the next one?
It's 9, darkness. There was 2 different phases of this darkness.
Okay.
The first phase is 3 days, and then 3 days. The first 3 days was you can't see. And the second 3 days, you can't move. So the first 3 days they were just plain dark. In other words, you couldn't see, very simple. And the second set of 3 days, not only can you not see, but you couldn't move. And the Jews, they could just walk around, they see everything, and all the Egyptians' money is just lying there. Let me just go and just take.
They just see. Hashem told the Jews, don't take it, just see. Okay, I see behind this picture there's a safe. Cool.
And it says the code 9999, right?
Right.
And so he looks at the code. He's like, "Oh yeah," and it's like,
Good thing to remember.
"Oh, here's where you hide the keys to your Lambo. Oh, now I know that. This is where you keep your gold. Okay, and that will help soon, as we'll see."
So then in the final plague?
So the final plague was the plague of the firstborn. And then all the firstborns, every single firstborn in Egypt just died. In the middle of the night, they just all died. So Paro, he runs to Moshe.
He himself was a firstborn after all, so.
Oh, he what? Pharaoh was a firstborn? Okay.
He's like, "Moshe, just get out of here, right?
Don't even wait for your bread to rise.
Gotcha.
Get out of here, right?"
Okay.
So he goes and Moshe's like, "No, we're going to wait until the morning. Because we don't want to look like we're like robbers, like just like sneaking out in the middle of the night.
Right.
We want
okay.
to look like we're like going out in like style." So next morning, Moshe tells every Jewish person, "Go and remember in Choshech, you were looking at where everyone's money is. So go to that person where you saw his money is, and go say, 'Hey, you know your safe behind the picture? Everything that's in it, give it to me.'" And they got so much money; they were rich beyond rich.
They didn't steal, but the Egyptians were inclined to want to give it and send them on their way. So thank you, gentlemen, for going through that. Any final thoughts, words of wisdom you want to share that can help us all have a more meaningful Pesach?
No, nothing really, but like just do it.
Just do it. Okay. Yehoshua, any other parting words?
Yeah, like Akiva said, just do it.
Have a great Pesach.
Have a good Pesach.
All right. Great final parting message from my esteemed guest when it comes to Pesach. Just do it. Thank you, gentlemen. You have an amazing Pesach, and we all, and me and the audience, appreciate your time.